Hello and welcome back to the Fencing Referee YouTube channel. My name is Lisa Campi-Saperi and I am the FencingRef.com, the Fencing Referee on Facebook, and of course, subscribe right here to this channel. Today we're going to be continuing with the penalty chart, one of the most important resources that any referee can have. I've told you, I've confessed that I have a little laminated one in my pocket because it's a really important kind of resource to have, especially on hand, and especially when people have questions about the rules or questions about why they're getting a yellow card. One of the yellow cards I actually forgot to talk about was the one that's right up on top here. Now this one is a little more abridged than the FIE rules. The FIE rules include things like not wearing country colors or names, and a lot of them apply to certain levels of a competition, especially important competitions like World Championships. Ours, we've simplified it to have just not present, a team member or a fencer not present when first called. There's the first call, which is supposed to be a yellow card. I'll be honest, I don't really see the yellow card being given. A lot of times I help announce over the loudspeaker, second call, but I know that they really haven't gotten that yellow card. Some tournaments, it's really serious, and they do get a yellow card in that first call. It's supposed to be a 1-minute interval, then that red card, and then another 1-minute interval, and then the exclusion. Nope. It's elimination. It's a different than if somebody does something behavioral to get a black card. Behavioral black cards, we're going to do this as a point of review, are this fourth group right here. There are behavioral black cards in the third group too, which can be red to yellow, red to black or yellow to black. I call these yellow to black, and those are things like disturbing order. Manifest cheating are in this fourth group. Going up the chart to review, we've got the third group. These are things like dishonest fencing, pairing with the back arm, blow with guard or pommel. Those are instant reds. And then the part of the chart that we're still going over, and it's hard to believe that it's taking this many modules to go over it, is the yellow to red. Now yellow plus yellow doesn't equal red. It's yellow and then red, so your first offense. The rules also, I should mention importantly, that the rules mention that you're supposed to get the yellow card first, the least level offense first, and then the red. An example, I was talking with a couple of referees was, what if I parry with my back arm and then also jostle my opponent? Well, you don't get the red card first for parrying with my back arm. You get the card for jostling, which is a yellow, and then you get a red, because if you got the red card first, then the yellow would be jostling. And there are circumstances where 2 points can be given. This is not one of them. You would give the yellow for jostling and then the red for parrying with the back arm. If that's even possible, I don't know. I just wanted to give you an example that you give the lesser of the penalties first and then the more serious ones. Continuing with, we were right here. So let's see, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down on the penalty chart. And we were talking about clothing or equipment non-conforming. Speaking with a very good referee, and he had learned, I had told him that I'd learned that when you confiscate, it's for the protection of the athlete. Not shocking to you, those of you who have seen these videos, I'm very athlete-centered. I'm here for the athletes. I'm here to make it more fair for them so that they can, have a day of fencing that is fairly judged. But he told me that it was his understanding that the confiscation of the weapons is because if the fault is found to be not with the fencer's equipment, but maybe the floor cord or the spool or the reel, then you can back out the penalties, so to speak. So say somebody has 3 foils that fail, and they fail because there's a white light going on. And all of a sudden you figure out that it's the floor cord. You can then, because you've confiscated the equipment, kind of figure out and tease out what pieces of equipment were or were not working. And you take away the cards from the athlete. And I thought that was a great point. I had always been taught that it was, that it was to protect the athlete, and he had been taught it was so that he could efficiently apply the rules if the fault was not found with the fencer's equipment. This is why I want to start the conversation with you guys giving me comments, and a lot of you have given me great comments, because you never know who's going to come up with the more relevant answer. I don't know which one's correct, but it certainly is a really great idea to A, protect the athlete, and B, to be able to go backwards in confiscation. So that confiscation also leads to the fact that the fencer had another weapon to present to the referee. Because if you don't have a second weapon, well, what is that? That's right here. Absence of second regulation weapon or body cord, mass cord, or mass cord. So you have to have a second body cord or weapon or mass cord to present. A second one that works. I had a young man who came with a broken blade. It was in 2 pieces in his hand. This is my second weapon. And I went, you need to have a second weapon that actually works, or that actually appears to work. And he goes, why? And I'm like, because it's in the rules. I showed him my little laminate thing. He goes, oh, okay, but I don't have another weapon. And I said, make friends quickly. He goes, oh, okay. And he found a friend who lent him a weapon, and luckily it worked because he actually did need it. So having a regulation second weapon is something that is in the rules. You need to have a weapon, a body cord, and a mass cord, and you have to have them with you. And if you don't have them with you, that could be a yellow card. It's one that typically gets applied like at local tournaments when I say to somebody, get that second weapon. Oh, I didn't know I need to have it. Well, you do. I might be the only one in the room who checks for it, but go get it. And typically it's very fortuitous when they have that extra body cord or that weapon. Like I told the story of the young man who did a parry riposte with a saber, and his guard and his body cord is dangling, and he's got, kind of part of a very little of his weapon left in his hand. And he's like, well, good thing you made me get that second weapon. The next part of this 3-part rule is excessive bend of the blade. Excessive bend of the blade. The rule of thumb that I use is if you can see a bend in the foil or the epee, it's probably too much. And that's probably a decent kind of way of looking at it. I will confess that when I fenced foil, the bend of the blade was actually, there was more in the rules we were allowed. Right now it's 1 centimeter, which for most people is about a pinky width. I think it was 2 centimeters at the time. Might have been 3, I don't know. But I used to have a blade that I had particularly bent so that I could hit lefties on the back with like a parry riposte to the ribs, And so I had like a special blade that I was trying to use to my advantage because the rules allowed it, because the bends were more, they had more leeway in them, let's just say. Basic rule of thumb is that it's 1 centimeter for foil, and then it's about 4 for saber. They have to be in one direction, and they have to not be they have to be smooth, and they have to be continuous throughout the whole blade. You can't have a hook at the end of an epee tip and say this is allowed. And something to think about too is put yourself in their shoes. If I were a little short epee girl and I had a really tall epee guy and he had a bend in his blade that was mostly at the tip, I would probably not be happy with that, because he could probably just extend his hand and hit me at the top of my wrist right there without any difficulty. So the rules for the bends have a reason, and that reason is to create an even playing field and to not give one person a greater advantage. So think about that. When you're refereeing, what's one way you're evening the playing field is to keep those blades nice and straight. Honestly, it's really difficult to be perfectly legal, and it's really a matter of you maintaining the fact that excessive bend of the blade, like the rule says, is what you need to protect the athletes from. The next rule we're going to talk about is kind of connected to that rule, because sometimes the blades need straightening, and it says placing the weapon on the strip to straighten it. It is my belief that this rule comes from originally when there were copper strips, and they seemed like thick copper, but they were kind of fragile. And if you went to bend your blade on it, you could actually ruin the copper strip and put holes in it. And those holes were then put with like this silver tape that they would try to pound in, and it didn't really work, and the tape would come off. And really that was kind of what I was taught. You have to, when you bend your blade on a conductive piece, you want to make sure that you step off the strip, especially if you've got to kind of step on it and bend it with your foot. You never place that weapon on the conductive piece to straighten it. The next rule, which is very interesting, is also related, I believe, and it's bending, dragging the weapon or point on the conductive strip. This one is specific to foil and epee. Now, could that be to protect the fencer's tips? Could it be that the tip could somehow create problems? I don't know. But it's very clear that you're not allowed to drag that tip. Now, if you're doing it as part of the normal fencing action, so in epee, if I go to hit a foot and I miss and I happen to drag it, I don't want to drag it all the way back. I want to make sure that I'm lifting it. But when you're in the heat of battle, that's not what that's talking about. It's not talking about if somebody's trying to make a touch. It's talking about if somebody is doing something like digging their tip into the strip to bend it or fix it or whatever. And that's the moment they're talking about. If it's happening during normal fencing, then you don't penalize it. Does that make sense? We are not getting very far in these videos. We just aren't, because there's more to it than just reading a rule and learning the rule. You have to know about the application of the rule. And that's what's going to make you a better referee. I really find that a lot of people, they err on the side of everything's a violation of the rules. You have a yellow card for everything. You need to find that balance, because you don't want to be that referee that nobody wants because you're too enamored and technical with the rules. They want to find the referee that's making it fair for everyone and is reasonable. All right, this has been another few minutes, about 10 minutes with me, the fencing referee, and I hope that you have learned something, and I thank you so much for taking the time to become a better referee. Take care now.